Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of our tutorial series on importing your character creator 3 characters into Unreal Engine 4 using the CC Auto Setup plugin. And here we are going over the different parameters on different different facial features on our character. We're going to cover the mouth, the tongue, the teeth, the eyes, and the hair in this tutorial. I'm going to go through the parameters and kind of show you how you can adjust those to refine to get the look that you want. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and load our skeletal mesh up here. And we're going to isolate the tongue here, but first we need to go select the tongue in the skeleton. Since open it with the jaw root there, our hierarchy. So let's zoom in really close on our character, and just rotate that jaw open like this. You can see there is our tongue and our teeth. Got a nice close in look right there. And what we can do then is just we'll go ahead and isolate our tongue, the tongue material there. Let's zoom in real close on our character first. And get a nice look at our character's tongue. So let's just go ahead and isolate the tongue material at the top there, and isolate it. And get a little bit of a closer look. Oops. A nice big tongue, disembodied tongue right there. All right, I think that should be okay. And what we're going to do is take a look at all the materials on the tongue here. So with the tongue selected there, what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the tongue material there, and let's just make this a wee bit smaller. There we go. We'll just take it off over here actually, and look at the tongue parameters. There we go. Just over here to the side. Okay, so for the tongue we're going to take a look at, you can see we have a whole bunch of values, but we're going to take a look at the values down here. Flesh brightness and flesh scatter and all these ones right here. So if you take a look at flesh brightness, you can modify that. Pretty simple stuff, okay? We'll just reset it back to the value it was. And flesh color compensation allows us to blend the original texture and the embedded tongue texture here, okay? So we'll do something like this. You get to more of the original, and then we get more detail as we go further down there. So you can adjust that value to whatever you want. Let's just go to 0.7 for example there. Just get a nice bright kind of tongue. And then the next one down was flesh detail amount. So flesh detail amount is essentially the strength of the bumpiness on your character's tongue there. So you can see the detail right there. If we take it down to 0 and take it up to 1 there. I'm just going to use a value of 0.9 here and get a nice look right there. I'll just zoom in a little bit closer so we can see it a little bit better there. Okay, there we go. And let's bring that back up. And flesh detail scale. So this is essentially just the scale, the density of the bumpiness on the surface of your character. We can take this up or take this down. Okay, really depends on how much texture you really want on your tongue there. Okay, we'll just do a bumpiness value of like 3.2. Get a nice result like that. Never thought I'd be spending so much time on a tongue here. All right, so we'll take a look at the roughness as well. So roughness, as you can see, is fairly straightforward as it was in the previous tutorial here. We'll set the roughness value to 0.4 here. And the flesh scatter. Flesh scatter is basically like the hydration of the tongue, I guess you can say. We'll just go ahead and take that down. You can see less flesh scatters makes it like rough and almost like a cat's tongue. And a little bit more makes it seem a bit more soft and moist. All right, so we'll just take that value of flesh scatter. We'll take that to like 0.95 maybe. And there we go. A nice soft tongue there. And then finally, flesh specular. Again, fairly straightforward. You get your specular channel right there. We'll just leave that value to value of 1. Okay, and that's pretty much all we have to deal with in terms of our tongue there. Let's move on to the gums and the teeth. So the gums and the teeth, you can use either the upper or lower teeth. You can adjust them separately. Let's go ahead and throw that up here and bring that window over here. One more time. So for the gums and the teeth, let's go ahead and isolate that now. There you go. And where's my teeth? Upper teeth right here. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here is just modify these values slightly. Okay, so for the gums, we have similar values as we had for the tongue there. If we go down here, we have the flesh brightness and color compensation, all these ones right here. So let's go ahead and reselect all of those. And they basically have the same effect as they did on the tongue. So we'll just go ahead and set these values really quick. The flesh brightness, I'll just set to like 0.9. You'll be able to see a difference there. Color compensation for this one, I'm going to set to 0.7. Okay, you can see it just like that. And there's the results right there as well. Flesh detail amount, maybe just take that down a little bit. Don't have to have too much detail, make it a bit softer maybe. Value of like 0.9 something. And then flesh detail scale, well, that can be a little bit higher as well. So again, you don't want to have it too messy, okay? You want to have it nice and tight looking, so about 3.2 on that. And we'll go to the flesh roughness as well. So roughness, again, very straightforward. We're just going to set that to 0.4. Flesh scatter, again, same as with the tongue. We'll set that to, you can see the result right there. Make it rougher looking or just kind of softer looking. Set that to 0.4. And finally, our flesh specular. Okay, so you can take that up or down. And this should be a fairly high value just because we want the gums to be looking moister and more reflective. So 0.95 maybe I think would be a good value for that. Okay, and then we can also go down with the teeth to the teeth here as well. So teeth values, we have things like teeth desaturation. Okay, here's the mask map for the teeth. I'll just load in teeth desaturation so you can see you can make them pretty yellow or nice and white. I'll go ahead and leave this a value of 0.09 right there, which is fine. Teeth detail amount, again, not a whole lot of detail on the teeth. Let's just try and get a bit of a closer look here. I need to change my camera speed maybe a bit here. Let's take that a little further down. There we go. And for teeth there, detail amount. Okay, so you can see the details right there on the teeth. Get a bit more texture if we had at a higher value there. Teeth detail, I'm going to set that to 0.16. Okay, and the detail scale as well. So the scale, again, will just kind of show this, adjust the scale of the value for your teeth detail. You can kind of see the difference right there, okay, especially at a lower value. Okay, so I'm going to just take this, leave it at about 3, that's fine, I think. Not going to really notice that much. Teeth diffuse brightness. You can see it right there. Make them really sparkling or really dirty and old looking as well using this value. Well, we'll just leave this at, I don't know, something like 0.8 maybe. Okay, nice bright looking teeth. And the normal strength on the teeth as well. Adjust that. Okay. Pretty easy to determine the normal strength. We'll leave that at 1.3 or something like that. Not too much detail on the teeth there. And teeth roughness as well. Okay, so you can have a bit more roughness on the teeth. Okay, we'll just leave that at let's see, 0.3 maybe. And finally below that, the roughness of the back of the teeth. Okay, you can individually adjust the roughness on the back of the teeth as well. Let's go ahead and do that. You can see right there. It's only on the interior sides of the teeth, so right about there. And around here, you'll see that affecting that. And we'll just leave that at 0.75, maybe. No, 0.1, I think will be fine. And finally, teeth scatter. So teeth scatter is for the transparency of the teeth, really. It's a good value to know. Let's go ahead and just bring that up. You can see right there, you can make them more transparent. It's almost like a subsurface scattering in a way. And we'll just leave that value at 0.75 there. Okay, just tweak that. And finally, teeth specular is the last one we're going to take a look at for the teeth. And that'll give us a nice reflective look on our teeth if we have a higher value closer to 1 there. Okay, so it really depends on the type of look you're going for. I'll just leave it at 0.4 around there. A little bit natural looking, not as shiny as the 1 value. But yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, finally, let's go ahead and take a look at the eyes. So for the eyes, I'm going to just go ahead and close down the editor windows here. Okay, next we're going to briefly look through the values of the character's eyes. So to find the eyes, we're going to make sure the view is selected. And we'll go over here to search for cornea, and we'll just use the left cornea since it's a little bit closer to the camera. Okay, and the first thing we're going to take a look at is the eyeball values here. Okay, so for eyeballs, we have shadow hardness and shadow radius. Okay, fairly simple stuff. If we increase the hardness to like a value of 1 and decrease the radius, you can see which each one does, what value each one refers to when it's modifying the eyeball here. Okay, so you can probably set those back to normal values by pressing the reset to default value right here. And I think we'll be happy with our lives when we just set it back to the default value there. All right, so that's the eyeball hardness, and shadow radius. Next of all, let's go down to the sclera. Okay, so the sclera, did we just miss it? Yep, there it is. So you have a sclera map for sclera color and sclera normal map. Okay, so the sclera is kind of like the white area around the irises. Okay, we'll get a little bit of an anatomy lesson as we move through this for the character eyeballs. Okay, so for the sclera, we have sclera brightness, which is, the brightness of the sclera. Pretty simple stuff. We can increase or decrease the brightness. You can see right there. We'll just leave that back at the default value, and we'll move on. So the next one is the sclera normal UV scale. So sclera normal UV scale, this is kind of we have to combine this with this sclera flattened normal here. Okay, so we'll just kind of, whoops, I didn't want to do that. I'll move this a little bit over here so we can see the sclera flattened normal. Okay, so if we increase that, you'll see we can actually add some like weird, creepy looking texture to the eyeball like that. And if we add this, change the scale, it'll be like just large. We can make it bubbly or, smaller like this. So you can kind of add a bit more texture to your eyeballs if you really want to. Something a bit less would probably be more realistic. And you want to combine that with various other parameters as well. Okay, I'm just going to keep these at default, by the way. Okay, and we'll work with that. Now we also have sclera roughness here as well as sclera UV radius. Okay, so roughness and UV radius. If we decrease the roughness, you can see increase or decrease the roughness, we'll get value. Maybe we take it to like -3, for example. It'll be a bit more noticeable at lower values. But then you also have to use a sclera UV radius as well. So this one's pretty simple. Generally, you wouldn't want to modify this one too much. We'll just reset these back to normal, and we'll move on with our lives. After the sclera, let's take a look at the iris. Now, the iris has different masks on it. You can see if we go up here, we have iris inner mask, iris displacement map, and iris normal map. Okay, so if we double click on the iris inner mask, you can see here which parts of the iris here are contained within which color channel. Okay, there's the blue, the green, and the red. Okay, they all cover a different area of the iris. Okay, we'll just go ahead and close that down for now. Just so you're aware, we're using the inner iris mask. So let's first take a look at the IOR, the refraction rate of the crystal of the eyes. So that's found down here. If we go closer to the bottom here, IOR, there we go. We can modify that. You can see we get the iris, basically larger or smaller. It's just the refraction rate. Okay, so it'll look a little bit different. Let's set that back to the default value there. After that, we have the iris refraction on or off. You can turn it on or off, okay? Not much of a difference here, but if we increase that value to something like this, and we decide to turn it off, we go back to the default value there, okay? So that's one thing to take note of there. There's also iris depth scale, okay? So below that is iris depth scale, and if we increase that, okay, so it'll kind of like seem like the iris is deeper, okay? Almost like increasing or decreasing the size of the pupil, but in addition, it's modifying the entire iris, okay? So this seems like this iris is more concave, and this one's almost a bit more convex, okay? That's what the iris depth scale does. We'll just leave that at the default value there. There's also the iris brightness, okay? Iris color brightness. Okay, you can increase that like this, okay? You can set the iris color to whatever you want as well. Like if I wanted to set this back to like a red color, for example. There you go. We get some really funky looking color. Maybe something like this would be a bit more, realistic, a nice green color like that. But that's really how you can just modify the colors of the iris. Okay, let's go ahead and take that back, and we'll just reset that value back to 0 there. And there you go. Okay, so that's what that does. We also have the iris concavity power, which increases the three-dimensional feeling of the eyeball. So the iris concavity power, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So increase or decrease the 3D appeal of the feeling of the eye like this. A lower value will make it seem a bit flatter, just like that. You can increase the value like this to kind of add a bit more of a three-dimensional feel to it. Okay, I'll just reset that back to normal there. And there's also the iris color, cloudy color and inner color. Okay, so we talked about the iris color. Now there's also the inner color. Okay, and if we change the inner color, you can see the result right there. The red is fairly strong. Okay, let's just keep it at red for now, just because we're going to talk about the inner scale next. So we can make that larger, have that red sort of creep into the surrounding blue. Okay, so you can do a lot of really cool things with the iris. To be honest, I'm just going to refresh these back to their normal values here, though. Okay, maybe for this one you could have even a darker kind of green on the inside of the iris, something like this. and that could be pretty cool looking. Okay, yeah, we'll probably just reset that one for now. Okay, take it back to normal. And there's also the iris cloudy color, which I forgot to mention here as well. So this one, that needs to be something a little bit different. You bring it up like this. You need to bring the value up slightly. So you can make it sort of cloudy, kind of a cloudy iris, or the lower the value here, the more high contrast it's going to be. Okay, so that's how you can kind of add sort of a cloudy cover it on top of the iris there. Let's go ahead and just reset that for now. Okay, so there's also the roughness and UV radius here as well, which we'll talk about. So the iris roughness, I mean, you can kind of increase that to make it's almost the same effect as the cloudy effect that we had earlier, the cloudy color. But you can kind of just make it a bit rougher, and it'll just affect the specular highlight on the iris, really. Okay, you can take that to whatever value you want. Generally, a lower value is recommended, though. And then there's also the iris UV radius, which is the size of the sclera. Okay, so you can see like this. You can make the iris really small or really large like this. Okay, and that'll have a strong effect on the appearance of the character's iris. Generally, what I like to do is have a little bit of a higher value, so you can kind of get that darker rim around the iris, because it makes it stand out a little bit more, I find. I mean, if you compare this one to this one over here, it stands out a significant amount more. Next up, let's talk about the limbus, which is kind of like the area surrounding the iris here. So we can change the limbus dark scale here. And you can see the result right there. Fairly simple stuff. Again, I like to have sort of a darker edge around my iris, just to kind of make it pop out more and a little bit of emphasis. Again, you have to be very careful with this. Make it a very subtle effect. Something like this compared to that one. I think it looks a lot nicer with the kind of edge around it. Okay, and there's a limbus pow here, which is basically the strength of the limbus. Okay, if you just take that up or take that down, there you go. Okay, so you can make it darker or lighter like this. Again, the result is totally up to you, whatever you want to do. There's also limbus UV width color and limbus UV width shading. Okay, so width color, you'll see the result right there. You can make it really wide, the color really wide, and the shading amount, you can adjust that as well. Okay, so I like to have a higher shading value, maybe with a little bit of a lower or increased size of the width color there. Again, it's a tricky balance to kind of get these evenly distributed and nicer looking. But generally, you want a nice faded edge, kind of like this around. I think it personally looks a lot better, but again, to each their own. Okay, so we can just kind of take all those off if you want. Change it back to normal there. And finally, we have the pupil. Okay, so the pupil is closer down to the bottom here. Pupil scale, fairly simple stuff. Scale the pupil. Make it look like he just took a bunch of drugs or something, or he just went for an eye test, or make it seem like he just, has been in the sunlight or something too much. Again, generally you just want to keep this to a relatively normal value. Let's take a look finally now at the hair. So let's close this down and take a look at our character's hair. Now there's 3 pieces on this particular hair. You can see we have this scalp transparency right here. We have the hair transparency 1 and true as well. So these are all hair textures. Okay, the scalp is just for the scalp of the character underneath all the hair. So let's zoom out here and take a look at the hair instead. All right, we're going to go at it from this angle here, and we'll click off the character there. Or actually, we're going to click on him, and let's load up one of the hair material maps there. Okay, and then we'll click off. Now, I'm going to load up a different hair just here momentarily. This hair in the editor, this A-line bob here that we have here. And let's just focus on this right here. Okay, so you can see the reflectiveness of the hair. Okay, now you can really dictate how the light reflects off your character's hair. What I'm going to do here is load up the materials for this, element 0. And let's open up the material for the hair there. Now the hair actually has a tangent map here. Okay, so you can see the tangent map right here. And this really determines the specular highlight of the hair, where it's placed and how it reflects off the hair here. Now you can adjust this. Right now we have tangent line bob selected. We can select something like tangent horizontal, and you'll see the reflectiveness on the hair go horizontal like this way instead of the other way. So again, the tangent horizontal versus the tangent line bob here, you get much different reflective results. And you can determine that by going into your opacity map for your hair. And you can see here that we have what the tangent map looks like. There's a green on one side, red on the other side. So So this determines which parts of your hair are reflective in which directions. So if I went to like tangent vertical, for example, we'll have everything vertical, okay, because everything is red. And the green will indicate horizontal tangent reflection on your character's hair, just like this, okay? So just keep that in mind. And again, if you want, you can adjust the opacity. Just double click on the opacity map, and you can basically see like this part of your of the left side of the opacity map. There is certain areas of the hair which will reflect in certain ways, and anything on this map covered in red will be vertical, and anything green will be horizontal. So you can paint an image with red and green in accordance to the direction of the hair using the opacity texture. So you can load this up in Photoshop and do that on your own time. So there's a couple other settings with the hair I wanted to take a look at really quick, and that is the hair brightness. Okay, so right here, we can easily adjust the hair brightness. Okay, so fairly simple stuff. You can have a darker or a brighter, really fiery kind of red hair there. We'll just leave that at the default value. There's also the scatter value again. So this is kind of like, again, similar to subsurface scattering, just kind of creating a sort of semi-transparent, or rather simulation of semi-transparency on your hair. I'm going to take this back to the tangent line bob there. So we have certain parts reflecting vertically and certain parts reflecting horizontally there. And aside from the hair brightness and the scatter, we also have the alpha multiplier and alpha power. Now this one's very important. This one actually has quite a significant effect on your hair. So alpha multiplier, like this, you can see again, very sensitive value. Alpha power as well, okay, is a little bit more, a little bit less sensitive. You can really get the fine hair on the bottom will change a lot depending on your multiplier and your alpha power values. So if I did the same thing for my character right here, let's just close this down and select our character's hair, this transparency right here. Again, if we click off the characters, we can see the hair, the fine details a bit better. Down in our alpha multiplier and alpha power, if we were to adjust that, okay, you can see the result here. Okay, so these are two really important values. If you get sort of hair problems, you can adjust these to create finer details on your character's hair. Very important parameters, those ones to notice. Okay. So that's really about all I want to show you here as well. Now, I wanted to mention that there is a known issue with the standard shader when you're importing your character. You may have cloudy sort of eyes on your character. And the way you can resolve that is by using the opacity value, okay, on your hair. So you can change the opacity from 0 to like something like 0.8, and that'll normally get rid of the cornea material that's kind of occluding the cornea, the iris there on your character. So you can resolve that by just adjusting that opacity value by 0.8. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to show you guys in this tutorial. Thanks so much for bearing with me and going through all the parameters here, and hopefully learned about how to adjust those to refine your look of your character creator 3 character in Unreal Engine 4. So as always, make sure you check out our forums over at forum.reallusion.com, and I hope to see you in the next video.